Wednesday, March 29th, and this is Geeknights. Tonight we talk about V4 Vendetta, the comic.
Let's do this.
Well, happily, it's warm here again.
Hooray.
Actually went for a long run along some abandoned train tracks near us.
I changed my blanket last night to a less warm blanket.
And I finally didn't wear my coat to work. Woohoo!
I brought my coat to work, didn't wear it so much.
Nah.
Alright, I installed the beta of IE7 yesterday, and it's IE great. It has
issues.
It's like IE trying to catch up with Firefox. That's all I can say about it because I haven't used it that much. Except one thing is it renders pages still incorrectly. It renders them differently from IE 5 and 6, but it doesn't render them as good as Firefox or correctly. So whatever.
Of course, it still has that vulnerability.
It sure does. But there are actually, I think, 2 unofficial fixes for some vulnerabilities today. So
yeah, put out by other companies.
Yup. Microsoft sure isn't going to put them out right away. Anyway. Microsoft is currently telling people, they've known this for a while, that IE7 is going to render pages different. We know it does. But there was also that EOLOS patent. Now, if you weren't paying attention to this EOLOS patent, basically what it means is that IE is not allowed to do certain things because someone else has a patent on them.
Now, this is a bad patent in general.
It's a very bad patent. I disagree with it. I'm actually on Microsoft's side. But
yeah, not only that, but they're probably going to go after Firefox and Opera next after they finish with Microsoft.
Yeah, we'll see.
So this is far from over.
Yeah. The point of it is that they got Microsoft, and it means that IE7 is going to have to handle ActiveX type multimedia in the web page in a different way, making you click one more time to see it.
Yep, the patent is basically, the patent's fairly broad, but the one bit of it that I know is that if you use ActiveX or anything like that to use, I believe it's applet, embed, and object, those 3 things, it can't happen automatically.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's the stupidest patent in the world.
It's really, really dumb. But anyway, the point is that IE7 is going to not do what this patent says and whatever. And Microsoft is pretty much telling everyone, you only have X days to change all your web pages or they're not going to work when we switch everyone to IE7. Oh my God.
So, and all the people out there who have web pages that'll be affected have no idea what the hell's going on. They don't understand this.
Yeah, only people really close to Microsoft are going to, be told by Microsoft they're going to have to change. Everyone else, even big companies, all their customers are going to get automatic Windows updates. They're going to have IE7, and they're going to go to web pages with it, and their web pages aren't going to work right.
This is really going to hurt a lot of small businesses who paid some kid to make them a web presence a long time ago, and they don't know how to fix it or change it.
It's going to hurt a lot of companies with a lot of video on their sites, maybe even CNN and stuff. Who knows?
It'll also possibly hurt a lot of online stores that make heavy use of ActiveX.
Anyone who uses Java applets a lot on their pages.
Yep, which is really going to affect the people I work for currently in a bad way.
People who are selling a Java applet application. I know there's an online office suite that's basically a Java applet, and they're not going to do too well because whatever.
Yeah, I guess all you can really come away from this with, if you don't already know what's going on or aren't very in-depth on the tech, is that one, the way the internet works in a small way is going to change, which is going to be very obvious and apparent to most people because it affects things that they use directly and often. Yep. 2, there's nothing you can do about it.
It's just weird that in Firefox I use an extension so that I make it so I have to click one more time to get Flash to activate.
That only came up because people use Flash and that more for ads than for anything.
That's what a lot of people are saying is a lot of the people who are going to be affected by this are people who make ads. And you know what? Ads aren't going to work.
I disagree with the patent, but I'm fine with anything that hurts the advertisers.
Yeah, it's going to hurt the advertisers. The thing is, the advertisers are the ones who are going to lose a lot of money. Oh, wait. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Oh, terrific.
I mean, people keep saying that content doesn't exist in a void, that no one will make anything on the internet unless they can make money off of it. And the fact that Scott and I are here right now with a pile of professional equipment doing a podcast on the air and paying for everything out of our pockets really kind of shoots that shit down.
You know what I have to say? It's true. As long as you're talking about people who were born, I don't know, around 1957.
Oh, 58.
Anyone born recently, at least in the Western world, isn't an ass and will do shit for free because they like doing it.
I submit that many people in the Western world are asses.
They are, but Mostly the young people are not asses.
I would disagree with that too. I'd say mostly the young geeks. We really got to narrow this down because I would submit that most of the people I grew up with who went to high school with me would not do anything like this ever.
Well, they must like doing something.
Yeah.
They would do what they like for free.
You know what they're gonna do? They're all getting married and having kids and settling down and having terrible jobs, and they're eventually
There you
gonna
go.
kill
Free
themselves.
baby factories. All right. Let's move on.
Yeah. So you all know that Apple has been sued by a bunch of people over hearing loss and the iPods.
Great.
Now, I think this is bollocks. Absolute bollocks. I mean, it's fairly obvious that listening to music 24/7 on tiny little headphones really, really loud can damage your ears.
Well, the real damage doesn't come from listening to the music. It comes from too high decibels for too long a period of time. And
it comes from listening to it too loud. The problem is people often listen too loud because they don't realize it's too loud because they've turned it up to drown out all the ambient noise around them.
Exactly. The earbud headphones that come with the iPod, there's nothing wrong with the iPod itself. It's the headphones don't block out external noise. So if I wear them and a plane flies over, I'll still hear the plane, but now I can't hear the music. So what do? I make the music louder, and now I can hear the music just fine, and I don't hear the plane, but I don't realize it's too loud. And that over time, or very rapidly, will destroy your hearing completely.
So I guess in one way it is a matter of education, but while people should know about this, and while I think a slight education campaign would probably solve this problem straight up, people decided instead to sue Apple.
Yep.
Because it's obviously Apple's fault for making a product everyone loves.
Yeah, man, you can't have an amplifier in the iPod that can be turned up. It can't possibly be turned up to a point at which it will hurt someone's ears. Well, wait a minute. What if I plug it into a different speaker or a different headphone, and now it's not enough amplification because there's more resistance in that? Who knows?
Yeah, plus everyone's ears are different.
Everyone's ears are different.
Music is different. Music might be quieter.
Yeah, well, iTunes actually normalizes all.
Yeah, iTunes does. A lot of people don't use iTunes.
Yeah, I know. It's all crazy.
But anyway,
you don't have to install it if you don't want to.
Apple has responded to all this by adding an update to the new firmware. And basically what it does is it allows you to, one, set a maximum volume that it won't let you go past. So basically, if you want to make it louder after you do this, you have to go through one extra click, and then you can make it louder.
Okay.
Which I guess will remind you. And two, parents, or anyone really, can lock the volume at a maximum. And then the only way to make it go above that is to enter a PIN.
Ooh.
Which is just ludicrous.
That's just silly.
I mean, honestly, the only real way to go about this is either to get isolation headphones, which are big and cost money, isolation earbuds, which are little and cost even more money, or active sound cancellation, which is little and cost even more money.
Well, there's some noise-canceling headphones you can get that aren't so expensive.
Well, but you're going to spend at least $80.
You're not going to get any of those things for $20 or $10.
You'll spend at least $80 to get a decent pair of headphones that will let you listen to music for long periods of time without damaging your hearing.
Yep, I bought $120 Isolation 6i earbuds from Etymotic, and they're fantastic. Like, you put them in, and you can't hear shit. All you can hear is what comes out of those headphones. It's fantastic. And they're small. They come with a little case thing. Ooh, well worth the money.
Yep.
And my hearing is saved. Things of the day. All right, this is a thing of the day in Spanish, but there aren't so many Spanish words, so I think you'll be all right. It's las onomatopeias. Now, if you don't know what an onomatopoeia is, it's one of those words that sounds like the sound.
Whack!
Yeah. Specifically, these are the onomatopoeias from the old Batman TV show.
You know, the terrible one.
The Adam West live-action, terrible, god-awful, corny cornball.
Honestly, I consider Adam West to be the second best Batman.
Yeah, I guess so.
Right after Michael Keaton.
Yep. I mean, those other Batmans weren't up to par. Anyway.
Batman?
Actually, I heard that the Batman Begins is pretty good. I haven't seen it yet, though.
Yeah, everyone keeps saying that. Maybe we should,
Maybe that'll become the second best Batman, and Adam West will go down to number 3. Anyway, this website here has a picture of every single one of those BAM, clanketh, crash, plop, slosh, etceteras that was ever in the TV show.
Yeah, that's it.
Not only that, it also tells you which ones were used in which episodes, including the movie, and how many times each one was used.
So there are interesting correlations down there.
Yeah. The number one most used one was kapow. It was used 50 times. Pow comes in number 2 at 49 times. And after that, you get mostly biff and bam and boff.
Never understood biff. I mean, that was in River City Ransom, too.
Yeah, I don't know who came up with that. Maybe it's like a 70s thing or an 80s thing.
Yeah. Anyone old listen to Geeknights? Where'd biff come from?
Yeah, as far as I know, Biff is some guy's name.
Yeah, some guy from Back to the Future.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
All right, so I have had in the past 2 different things of the day that involved some form of marching band or drum corps or whatnot. Now, my thing of the day today is the same kind of deal. However, it's special, and I think it warrants a thing of the day mention. Now, the video I linked to, and from that site you can get a link to the whole documentary, of which this is only a small part of it. And basically, it's, as far as I'm concerned, some of the most advanced field and not really dancing, but field drill work I've ever seen, coupled with the most advanced stadium full of people holding up cards in a synchronized way work I've ever seen. It's absolutely amazing. In fact, it's so amazing, it's scary.
It's very scary.
You see, this is from North Korea, and this is a rally in North Korea, and watching this video and just seeing the absolute level of dedication and precision, if anyone has any doubts as to how absolutely 100% mobilized and militarized North Korea is, watch this video and watch this documentary.
It just shows you what, can happen when there aren't any fuckers and everyone goes along with what you try to tell them to do.
Yeah, yet at the same time, it shows you how easily you can completely dominate an entire civilization.
What really scares me the most is that there are a lot of people in this country who would think that that's good. Like, if they got their whole elementary school full of kids to do that, they'd be like, oh, look, everyone is so well behaved. Oh, it's wonderful.
I mean, I guess most people seem to think that North Korea, at least most people I talk to around here, not so much the geeks, but normal people I run into at work, North Korea is this backwater country that's all warlike and we can just ignore it. And they don't seem to realize that North Korea is a very industrialized modern nation. It just happens to be completely cut off from the rest of the world. The people there have no idea what the rest of the world is like, and they're just ready for war all the time.
And we don't really know a lot about what North Korea is like except for the stuff in this documentary.
Yeah, I mean there's very little that's actually known about North Korean culture.
If you watch this documentary, you'll know more about North Korea than most people outside of North Korea.
I mean, the only other thing is, I forget what it was called, I'll have to ask, but Emily a while ago told me about a book someone who was in North Korea for a while wrote, and it describes a lot more about their culture. And if I remember it, I'll say it on another show, or I'll post it in the forums when I remember, because it's really interesting. And North Korea, I'm fascinated and scared of at the same time.
The scariest thing I think about North Korea is that it's really less than 100 years old.
Yeah. I mean, North Korea didn't really come into being until the Korean War, when, for those of you who don't know American history so well, we lost and basically got our asses handed to us and had to give up. And the war never ended. In fact, the North Korean War technically is still going on because South Korea never signed the armistice.
Yeah, armistice.
So technically they're at war.
Imagine this, like Hitler, right? He took like a decade or so to come around and do all his stuff he wanted to do, right? And he lost in the end. Imagine if Hitler didn't try to take over all of Europe and the world, and he just stayed in Germany, and no one bothered him, and he didn't bother anyone.
And he just militarized and militarized and militarized.
And he did it for not 10 years, which is about the same amount of time he did have in real life, but for almost 50 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's North Korea. Not cool.
Anyway, watch the video and be amazed.
And shocked.
So in light of the fact that the movie came out recently, both Scott and I have also recently read V for Vendetta.
Yeah, well, I actually bought it months ago, and I read it then, and I read it again, last week, and then for the first time in, a few years, we went to the movie theater.
Yep. It was actually kind of a scary experience. There were ads, and there were normal people there in the way.
It was quite frightening. $6.50. I remember it used to be $4.50.
Yeah, $6.50. That's freaking great. In the city, it's $15.
For $6.50, I can get
You can't get so much, really.
Dude, I could totally buy.
You can't even ride the roller coaster in Wildwood once. You can't even buy a meal at the diner.
I could play DDR 13 times on a 50-cent machine.
Yeah.
Or 6.5 times. I could play air hockey 13 times.
All right. I would at least contend that seeing V for Vendetta in the theater was worth that money. It was actually a very good movie. But we're not here today to talk about the movie because it's also a comic. In fact, the comic came first. And we realized that we could talk about the movie comic combined for more than 2 hours at least.
Yep. I mean, it's real big, so it's not hard to talk about a whole lot.
So I guess we'll start today being, anime, manga, comic day. A lot of times people seem to forget that third part is on there. We're going to talk just about V for Vendetta, the comic by Alan Moore and David Lloyd.
Well, David Lloyd's the artist and Alan Moore is the writer.
Yes. Alan Moore you may remember from Watchmen.
Yeah, he wrote that too, but the artist was different.
Yep.
They're both available at the bookstore.
Obviously.
And at the comic book store. You can buy the whole things in one book. You don't have to buy a bunch of little separate comic books or anything like that. All right, so sometime at the beginning of this episode, we're going to just talk about general stuff, and then you're going to hit the spoiler line. And
we will warn you.
We'll let you know when the spoiler line is, and that's the part where we'll start saying like what happened at the end and all that stuff. So if you haven't read it yet, just save this episode on your hard drive or whatever, and listen up to that point, and when you go and buy it and read it, because that's what you're going to do, you can come back and listen to the part beyond the spoiler line.
Or if you don't care, just keep listening. But regardless, we'll give you fair warning when we start to spoil things.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you don't plan to read it ever, might as well keep listening.
Yeah, at least watch the movie before you listen to the spoiler parts here.
Yeah, because we'll probably mention something about that.
Though we'll probably be talking about the movie tomorrow.
Yep. Wow. 2 episodes. Kind of crazy. All right. So, V for Vendetta is a story about a theoretical future, alternate future kind of thing.
Yeah, a very 1984-ish kind of future.
Yeah, it's more like an alternate present because it was like written in the 80s, so it's like what it could be like now if it had gone differently back then.
Now, the basic premise, well, there are a lot of ways to talk about the basic premise, but plot-wise, in terms of what happens, the basic premise is that there is a 1984-ish world order, at least in Britain, and there is a man who, for various reasons, seeks to undermine this world order.
And through very, very clever means, sort of Hannibal-ish in nature, I would say.
Yeah, transhumanist, I believe, could be a term for this.
Yeah, because he's very, how Hannibal is so smart that they can't get him, and he does things in such incredibly clever ways that no one can possibly stop him.
But also in the sense that Hannibal wasn't entirely human. He had transcended some of the aspects that make a human human, and thus his motives, methods, and means were alien to the humans who were trying to stop him.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, V for Vendetta very much follows the same kind of transhumanist ideas, along with all of the actual plot going on.
I think if that's it, it might be in there somewhere.
It's in there very strongly in a point that I don't want to talk about until the spoiler section.
Oh, you think it's in there strongly? Because I didn't see it so blatantly.
I think it's in there strongly. I didn't really realize it until the end when... I don't want to spoil it now, but we'll talk about it in the second half of the show.
Because for me, I only saw like a little tiny spot where it might fit in.
Well, I'll point out a scene later.
All right.
But anyway, aside from that aspect of it, it's also based very much on the idea of Guy Fawkes.
Now, if you're not from Albion, you might not know who Guy Fawkes is.
Yeah, in fact, when we saw the movie, they actually showed the legend, well, not the legend really, but the story of Guy Fawkes.
That was the first thing in the movie was the story of Guy Fawkes for people who didn't already know it.
A.K.A. Americans.
Yes. But we already knew it, so we kind of noticed. Whatever.
Remember the 5th of November.
Mm-hmm. The story of Guy Fawkes is that on November 5th, a long time ago, this guy named Guy Fawkes...
And a bunch of his followers.
Who
were all anarchists of some stripe.
Yep. They took literally barrels of gunpowder, and they snuck them under the Parliament building in London, and they were going to blow it up.
And they were, at least as far as history shows, they were caught at pretty much the last minute and stopped.
Like, literally, these guys had gunpowder in barrels under the building, and then the police or equivalent came in and stopped them. Like shot him or... Well, no, I think he was hanged.
Shot him? No, they didn't shoot him.
Yeah. They got him. If you notice, the Parliament building is still in London. It's still there.
Now, if you don't know anything about Guy Fawkes, read up a bit before you read this comic, because Guy Fawkes plays prevalently in this. It basically... The comic begins with the bombing of Parliament.
That's like the Guy Fawkes is like the number one of all the ideas in this whole comic. Guy Fawkes is number one. That's like it's about Guy Fawkes.
Very much Guy Fawkes and the ideas behind him, at least behind him from an external kind of academic perspective, because the actual Guy Fawkes's motives are probably a lot less.
Well, there's no way to know what they
pure.
were now, but that's not the point.
I don't think that Guy Fawkes had the same ideas in mind that V does here.
It's
in this
not
comic.
about Guy Fawkes in a biographical way. It's about Guy Fawkes in an idea sort of way.
Yes. But
at least read the Wikipedia on Guy Fawkes. So, let's talk about the different characters in this thing. The main character, the main character, even though it might not be from their point of view, is V, and he's this guy who wears a Guy Fawkes mask.
Well, even if he's not the main character, he is the motive force in the plot.
Yeah, definitely. He wears a Guy Fawkes mask, so you can't see his face. He has like a cape. He's sort of like a superhero, but he doesn't have any superpowers.
He's a superhero in the same way that Batman is a superhero.
Yeah, he's just a badass dude. And he goes about, doing terrorist things in this sort of 1984 scary super fascist Britain.
Yeah, and if you think that me telling you that he blows up Parliament is a spoiler, that happens on like the sixth page.
Yeah,
I mean, the story starts with V. And the other character you meet right away is this girl, Evie.
Mm-hmm.
And she is poor and destitute and needs money and has decided to prostitute herself.
Mm-hmm.
So she wanders out into the street, breaking curfew, to do this horrible thing she's never done before, prostitute for money. And to make a long story short, she runs into they call them fingermen, but basically police.
Yeah.
And police in this 1984 fascist society are quite horrible, I guess.
They're very horrible.
They decide they're going to rape her and then kill her because, according to the law, that's what they can do whatever they want to her. They caught her.
Yeah, it's fascism. Imagine if, you snuck out in Germany at night and ran into some SS guys. It's like that.
Yep. So then, suddenly, a crazy guy in a Guy Fawkes mask, spouting prose, appears. And in the blink of an eye, he kills all of them, or just about all of them, and saves the girl.
Mm-hmm.
And shortly after that, he takes her to a rooftop where he shows her the Parliament building, and then it explodes.
And he did it.
And he admits to it.
And he's like, look what I did. Whee!
That's one thing I really love about this book is how direct V is throughout the whole thing. I mean, someone asks him, like, did you blow up that building? He's like, yeah. Are you going to kill this person? Yes. Are you going to kill me? Yes. Oh.
That's one thing that really sets this apart from pretty much everything else I've ever seen is a guy in the mask where the only thing that's really secret about him is what he looks like under there. Everything else about him, he's just wide open. It's not like in a Gundam where there's a guy with a mask and he's all secretive and ooh. There's no mystery to V. He's just like, yeah, I blew it up. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Yeah, what are you going to do about it?
I can't think of a time where he lies in the entire comic.
No, he doesn't lie.
If someone, I mean, there's
a
scene where he's with a person and the person literally asks him, are you going to kill me?
Yep.
And he says, yes.
Yep.
You can't get more direct than that.
It's the total opposite of what's normally going on because, he has the appearance, the physical appearance of being mysterious and secretive, yet he's the exact opposite. It's just you see this, it's not like, sometimes there'll be the mysterious guy who doesn't say anything and you see him in the corner, like in Half-Life you see the G-Man. It's like there he is. He barely appears, he says some cryptic things, right? This guy says a lot of prose, and it's, you have to read it, but
it's actually very relevant. I mean, a lot of times you'll see a comic where, someone quotes a long quotation from something, and you kind of just glaze over it, or maybe you figure out what they're quoting, and then you ignore it. It all really fits in well, and it's worth it to read every word in this comic.
Yeah, it takes a long time to read this comic relative to others. I mean,
I kind of blew through it, but that's because I read it in a go right before we went to see the movie. I finished the comic, and then 10 minutes later we were in the car driving to the theater. So Evie, basically, she's probably the other main character.
Yeah, if you want to put the point of view somewhere, it's Evie. That's the story is mostly, not 100%, but mostly from what she sees and what she hears and that sort of.
Yeah, the story is driven by V. It affects Evie. And the only other real perspective you get is there are, policemen and investigators dealing with all this. And one of those investigators, you follow his perspective around a lot, too.
Yeah, he's the guy, there's the nose, the finger, the eyes, whatever. There's different government departments for each part of the face. I think it's eyes, nose, ears, mouth. I think that, and the finger. And this is the guy who works for the nose, because the nose is the detectives. They find out the information. So that's the guy that's you're kind of with a little bit more than the other guys who are just,
Yeah, I think
they're
like all the
important.
departments in the 1984 government.
Yeah, there's a guy who's the head of the finger, those are the guys. They're the head of each department
Yep.
that you're following.
And one of those guys, I guess he's the closest thing to a good guy, because, I mean, right away they say V's the villain.
Yeah, of course.
But in terms of a classical story from the side of the fascist government, there's really the only good guy is the one detective who's trying to stop V, the terrorist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the head of the nose. What's his name? I forget.
Oh, I forget. Actually, it's funny, but I forgot almost all the characters' names constantly while reading it. Yet that didn't seem to affect in any way my understanding of the comic.
I think some of that in the comic has to do with the art, because the art is sort of this. It looks like watercolors almost. I think it was printed in newspapers or not a super high quality magazine.
Yes, I mean, the people's hair color changes and things change all the time, and it's really hard to follow what's going on if you just look at the pictures.
That's another reason I think it takes so long, as opposed to reading like a crap Marvel comic, where everyone looks exactly the same as they did in the previous panel.
But yet at the same time, it had an interesting effect, at least for me. I mean, while I was reading it...
Oh, yeah, I definitely like it. I'm just saying, describing it.
The interesting effect I noticed was that as I read, the art was there, but it was in the background of the text, and I'd read the text, and instead of, like, The Watchmen, as I read it, I puzzled over every image, and I looked in the background, and I looked at
because there's stuff in the background of The Watchmen.
In this, I was picturing all the action in my head, and I was barely looking at the art. The art was just like a backdrop for what I was thinking.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's important, because sometimes they'll make, like, an important frame or two where there's something, like, symbolic. Like, you'll see him, because, the Guy Fawkes mask always looks the same, no matter what. So like they'll always zoom in on his face, and at the perfect time, and he'll be smiling because the mask is smiling, even though it doesn't fit with what's going on. It's like, ooh, they'll just use that a lot, and they'll use some other visual things here and there, especially when stuff's blowing up or when people are dying and such.
Now, the basic conflict. Oh, this is the thing that everyone who reviews this seems to say, but it seems to be mostly true that. The basic conflict in V for Vendetta is between the forces of anarchy and the forces of fascism.
That's pretty much it.
Basically, it's the two most extreme ideas, and put them in direct conflict.
Yep.
Now, it's actually much more subtle and varied than that.
Oh, there's more to it, but that's...
Yeah, but I mean, making a broad statement like that doesn't really do justice to the comic.
No, well, I mean, that's one of the things it's about. Being such a big... You could make one little comic that, like a normal-sized comic book about anarchy versus fascism, and that's all you would need. But it's so big, so that's just one of the things in it.
Yeah, well, another element of, anarchy versus fascism was the way it seems to go is that not anarchy in the sense of, chaotic, no government, crazy anarchy, but more in the sense of self-determination, that people should make whatever drama they're going to make on their own and not let a government or an authority make that drama for them and stifle their own lives.
Yeah, it's not the anarchy that, people seem to think when you say anarchy, which means everyone run around doing whatever they want.
Yeah, probably not the anarchy the actual Guy Fawkes wanted.
No, it's the anarchy that, people who call themselves anarchists will say can actually exist. That's the kind of thing we're talking about.
I don't know if it can exist or can't, but that's
a whole nother show.
That's a Thursday episode there.
Yeah, but that's what they're talking about in the book, is the anarchy that people who call themselves anarchists talk about.
Yeah, and basically just the idea that authority and fascism, or any sort of authority that has its power not through the will of the people, but through force itself, really can never do good. No matter how good the intent is, by stifling people's freedom, you take away everything, and nothing else matters.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you could say this book is a testament to one thing, it's a testament to the idea that freedom is the most important thing that can ever be had.
Live free or die.
And
I'm surprised it never said live free or die anywhere in there.
Yeah, but it makes a lot of other very quotable quotes.
Oh, it sure does.
This is quite a quotable comic.
I also think it has to do with the fact it's British, and it seems to call upon like history of Europe, and it doesn't travel over to America at all.
Yeah, which we're fine with, but honestly, if you don't know much about British history at all, I suggest you brush up a little before you read this.
Yeah, and brush up on important buildings in London. So you'll know which ones they're talking about.
At least that's not too important because you'll know, oh, that's obviously an important building, or I'm sure everyone knows what Big Ben is.
Well, but you want to know what Big Ben sounds like because
Yeah.
some people don't know. I bet as soon as you hear a wave of what Big Ben sounds like, you'd be like, "Oh, I've heard that. I get it." But yeah, like they'll show pictures in the comic of different buildings and things, and they'll like go to them, or you'll want to know like sort of how close they are to each other. That can sometimes help you out.
Now, there's one thing that kind of bothered me about it. Not about the story. This is a very meta observation, but in reading the comic, there are a few characters who speak in either Cockney or like thick Welsh accents.
Yeah, there's that one gangster dude.
I had no idea what the hell that guy was saying.
I had no idea what the hell that guy was saying either. You're not alone.
I mean, the way they wrote, I'm not going to even dig through. I'm holding the comic in my hand
It's
to look for an
towards
example.
the 3/4 of the way through that guy.
But the way
appears.
they write a Cockney accent, and I think it was on purpose, you really can't understand what he's saying. Even if you sit there and puzzle over it, it's not worth it.
Oh no, if I read it slow enough, I can tell what he's saying.
Oh yes, if you read it that slowly though, it's just not worth it at that point.
Yeah, I got the general idea of what he's saying because it's really not that important, and there's
No,
only
it's
like
not.
one or two people.
Yeah, I wonder if that was intentional. I mean, I wonder if Alan Moore realized that it's almost impossible to read that with any speed.
I have no idea. Maybe British people can read it. Well,
You know what?
Albionish people.
We've got several Albionish listeners out there. So if you've read V for Vendetta, we just have a simple question. Can you understand easily what they were writing there?
Maybe they can. Who knows? Well, I mean, think about this. If someone writes a comic where people have a southern accent or a Minnesota accent, can we tell what they're writing?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, it depends on how it's written. I think
Sometimes I can and sometimes I can't.
because I've seen Cockney and Welsh and things like that represented by other authors in other ways, and I've usually been able to read it. And it seems like just the way it was done, the letters that were used in this representation of it were just very difficult to parse.
You take a bunch of comics
And you put them in speech bubbles. Get in.
Get in.
We mean no offense to all the Welshmen out there, but yeah, Monty Python.
Wales is actually cool. They got a dragon on their flag. Can't beat that. I'll trade flags. Seriously. Yeah. All right. We're going to put the spoiler line here? I think we're going to put the spoiler line here.
Yeah, I think it's about time. So from this moment on in this current episode, if you don't want V for Vendetta to be spoiled, you should probably stop listening right now.
All right, so let's summarize the whole comic.
All right. Obviously, everyone who's still with us has read V for Vendetta or at least seen the movie.
Or doesn't care.
And if you don't care, you might be a little lost.
All right, so starts out, he blows up Parliament. And you have the book, so I forget exactly what. Next, the second chapter starts with that music.
Yeah, and then he starts murdering everyone who worked at Larkhill, which was basically a concentration camp.
Right, so V is this guy who we don't know his past, and he doesn't remember it either. But he remembers when he was at the concentration camp. Basically, they were doing medical experiments, and he was a guy who, during the medical experiments, didn't die like everyone else did. He was weird. He was a weird case. And he was in cell number 5. He was like, whoa.
Roman numeral 5, V.
Yeah. There's a lot of V's in here. A lot of V's.
Yes, and you may not notice it in the comic itself, but when you watch the movie, they take some lines from the comic and put them in the movie. And I don't think I've ever heard a man use that many words that start with the letter V in one coherent
I don't remember.
paragraph.
I wasn't sure when he was saying that. I was like, oh, that fits. But when he was saying that in the movie, all those words with V's, was that actually in the comic?
I don't think it was in the comic
I can't
word
imagine
for word.
I didn't notice it.
But very similar lines were all over the place.
Yeah. It also, I'll talk about that tomorrow. It's movie stuff. Anyway, so he begins killing all the people who worked at this concentration camp, who are now all about society, and killing some of them has special effects. Like, the government has this computer called Fate, which is basically the thing that runs the government. It makes all the decisions and handles all the logistics of the fascism.
Yeah, it's also the only plot thing in the comic that I didn't like and I didn't really think needed to be there.
Oh, I liked it. Anyway, and of course, the guy who is like the king, what do they actually call him in the book?
The leader.
The leader, right? He is the one who uses the computer, and he's actually sort of in love with it. Like, actually.
Yeah, it's this whole side plot.
Like, the leader of the country is a complete virgin, and he actually says things like, I've never had any loins, but I don't need any because I got you, my wonderful computer, Fate. So The first guy he kills is the voice of fate. He's basically this guy who goes on the radio like on every few hours a day and gives the news.
Well, I don't think we need to summarize the whole comic.
Yeah, I'm not.
Everyone here, because I think you've summarized almost nothing. And if you go at the rate you're going, we're going to summarize the whole comic over the next 10 minutes.
Okay, so let me try to pick it up.
I mean, I think we can just summarize the basic plot points. He kills all of these people who worked at the concentration camp.
Yep.
And then he continues to enact his terrorism. And the people start to take notice. And he basically, not directly, but indirectly leads the revolution that brings about the downfall of all authority.
Mm-hmm.
To put it very succinctly.
Yeah. Now, Evie, the second character, she starts out, almost getting raped by the Fingermen. And then V saves her and brings her to his hideout. Now,
she is definitely presented as a very weak character.
Yeah.
I mean, physically, emotionally, mentally, she is just weak.
Mm-hmm.
And over the course of the book, I mean, there's the point at which V actually tortures her for a good while. And this is the first transhumanist, other than the obvious V transhumanism bit that I noticed, that basically, he tortured her, and he put her through all that, and then she comes out, and she realizes that it was him. And then she goes up onto the roof, and I believe the word she uses is transfigures. She transcends the fear and the pain and all those useless or dangerous emotions, and basically transcends an aspect of humanity the same way that V had.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and as a result of this transcendence, she basically becomes V's protege, follower, disciple, what have you. And, I mean, she becomes the one who actually enacts his plan at the end.
Yeah, I mean, at the end, after, V dies, dun dun dun. Yeah, that's a spoiler line, I can say that. She actually becomes V after he's dead and then picks up a new person to be, her protege. It's like,
Yep, and I thought it was really interesting.
It was really. Like, it's not what I expected at all. Like,
now, the detective, surprisingly enough, the good detective, the one who was actually trying to find the truth and trying to stop V just because V was a killer.
Yeah, the nose guy.
He transcends in a different way.
Yeah, well, he ends up going to the concentration camp after all his detectiving. And he does
just like in all the Hannibal movies, when in order to catch Hannibal, you have to think like Hannibal and become Hannibal.
Yep.
The only way to catch a transhumanist is to become a transhumanist.
And he was like, he even said, like, I'm going to have to know this guy, and it scares the hell out of me.
And I love how they did this. He actually went to the concentration camp.
And he did a bunch of LSD.
He took LSD, and he basically went insane and mentally went through everything that V went through. And then he realized what V was up to, and he caught him. Fair and square.
He went right back down, and he's like, I know where the hell you are now. I got you. And then he shot him.
Yeah. The thing is, V definitely, I don't think there's any argument that V could have stopped him and wanted him to shoot him.
Oh, yeah. He definitely wanted him to. He wanted to get shot. He knew it was going to happen. If you read it, it feels like V is expecting this guy to show up. He's like, there you are. I was waiting for you.
Now, what I liked is I see two very real effects of this. Is that one, the guy who shoots him is very reliable as far as the government's concerned. So when he goes back and reports to his superiors, hey, I shot the terrorist, I shot V, they all believe him. And they report to the people that V's dead. And then when Evie appears in V's outfit and continues what he was doing, that's just like the final blow to the government.
Yep, definitely.
I thought that was very well done.
It seems like everything that V does is always, like, planned, and it seems at first like it has this side effect in the government, and the government guys, are now acting like in a, it's like V does something, and then the government guys start acting in a different way, but really, they're totally his, like, puppets. Like, he's so far above them that he can just, control everything they're doing. And actually, he has a computer link to the Fate computer, which is revealed towards the end. And so he actually is, not only is he controlling all the government guys, he's really controlling everything. It's like, oh, the guy who's actually been running everything for like 20 years is the guy who's against the government. It's like kind of weird.
Well, see, it's in a lot of ways, and I actually thought this a little bit. The movie goes into it a lot more because the movie just brings this up straight up, and it's not mentioned in the comic. But the Count of Monte Cristo, Edmund Dent, and how it's the same type of story in the sense of the guy comes back for revenge and various other things, and he plans everything perfectly, and everything goes off without a hitch from beginning to end. Like the whole thing was just dominoes ready to be knocked over.
Yep, which they have a nice little domino metaphor.
Yeah, in the movie and in the comic.
Oh, the dominoes in the movie were so much cooler than the
Yes,
dominoes in the comic.
very much. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But especially when the dominoes come back later in one scene and you go, ooh.
Mm-mm-mm.
Now, one thing I really liked was that in this kind of book where there's a guy with a mask, you always expect at the end, they rip the guy's mask off and you see who it really was.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they never take V's mask off is just fantastic.
Well, no. See, here's the thing. If you just made a story about a mask guy and you didn't take the mask off and you said, woohoo, I'm different. We didn't take the mask off in this one. Ooh, that's, it's like, okay, you tried to not take the mask off. The point is that not taking the mask off actually meant something.
Yep. In fact, I would submit that it didn't matter at all.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it wasn't taken off, and the fact that by the time I got to the end, I didn't care that the mask wasn't taken off says
I
a
didn't
lot.
care either, because there really isn't much to know. It's like, it's a disfigured face probably,
Well,
I don't need to see one.
My favorite scene of all that is after V's dead and he's laying there, and Evie's standing over his body. And the comic shows her reach over and take the mask off, and there's some guy's face there. And then it backs up, and you realize, no, that was just her imagining it in her head. She didn't do it yet. And then it shows
it's not some guy. The face that she sees is the face of, I think, Gordon or her dad.
Yeah, but
she does it a few times.
I'm just saying very generally. It shows a face. It shows a face. And then it shows it again, and it's a different face. And then finally, it shows again that she realizes she pulls it off multiple times and keeps seeing different faces because she hasn't actually pulled it off, and she doesn't pull it off, and she realizes that it doesn't matter.
Yep. It really doesn't. It doesn't even matter to the reader. I mean, it's like when I usually see like a Gundam, when you watch a Gundam and it's the mask guy, all you want is for the mask to come off because it's a mysterious guy and you want the mystery revealed.
God, Gundam Seed did that to the point where at one scene he's got the mask off but his back is turned and he starts to turn around to look at you and then there's like a conveniently placed thing and you don't see it. And it's like, don't do that.
That's because there's something, the way that those things are designed is the reader wants to know more. They need to know more. It is actually important as to who that guy is and what he looks like is important to the plot and the story. Here, it has nothing to do with it. The mask is his face for all intents and purposes.
And in fact, they even go into that in the story itself in a very cool way when the detective catches him and they're standing there and he shoots V over and over and over. He shoots him dead, and V ignores it and just walks over to him, and he says, right here's the line, "Did you think you could kill me? There's no flesh or blood within this cloak to kill. There's only an idea, and ideas are bulletproof."
Yeah, he said that in the movie, too.
Yep, and then he walks away, and then he dies later, but his idea lives on because Evie realizes what he was trying to do and assumes his mantle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one aspect of the comic that I really liked was the kind of political message, the very simple... I don't remember if this quote's in the book entirely, but it's definitely in the movie. But it was the quote that people should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
Yeah, and I don't think that was actually in the comic, but the comic did have, what was it? Vedi Vici something.
Yeah, the V quote?
Yeah, the V quote. The Latin one.
Definitely there's this idea that self-determination and self-rule...
Yeah, that was one line that was in the comic a lot of times that was not in the movie at all was, "Do what thou wilt."
Aleister Crowley?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's all about, you have this fascist government that doesn't let you do anything, and he's trying to say, "Do what thou wilt shall be the law of the land," blah, blah, blah.
Yep, and he keeps referring to a fairy tale of the land of do whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
And various ideas about that. I mean, he goes into a lot of the ideas of what anarchy really is. Transhumanism plays a very crucial role in this book. The political ideas of not letting your government control you unwillingly. Obviously, the fascism is a bad idea. The fact that unmitigated anarchy is just as bad because it's not actually anarchy but chaos. In fact, I believe he says exactly that. I forget where.
Yeah, there was a point at which the people start rioting and going crazy, and Evie is like, "Is this the anarchy you wanted?" He's like, "No, this isn't anarchy. This is just chaos." And he's like, anarchy is a world without government, not a world without order.
Yep, and he basically says, I did this so that the people would have the chance to either create a new thing or destroy the last thing they have.
Mm-hmm.
All right, all in all, because once again, we've talked for a while, and I know it's been a little rambly, but once again, we could talk forever. This is a very good comic. If you haven't read The Watchmen, read it. If you haven't read V, read it.
Like, even if you're not a person who reads comic books, like, I know some people are...
I mean, it's anime day. Most of you who listen to this day listen for the anime. We don't have so many fans who actually like the comic books.
Yeah, but there's plenty of comic book podcasts that are better than we are anyway.
Yeah.
But even if you don't read comic books, you should read this.
Don't consider V or Watchmen to be comic books. Consider them to be literature.
Well, they are literature.
Yes.
I mean...
But, like, consider them that way. Think of them as something erudite that you will learn a lot from.
It's just like reading a classic novel, only it happens to have pictures.
Yes.
Yet it's not for children. Like some illustrated, C-Spot Run book.
I just can't recommend these two comics enough.
Mm-hmm. I mean, no matter how crazy this Alan Moore guy is, I think we had a news about how crazy he was the other day.
Or at least how crazy he looks.
Oh, he looks crazy, that's for sure. He's got to be a little bit crazy in the head, too.
Rasputin.
Anyone who makes good art is always crazy in some way or another. He is the excellentest writer of comic books.
And actually, you won't often hear me say that the movie representation of a book is good. But also, and we'll talk about it tomorrow in fairly great detail, probably in greater detail, because now we'll be able to talk about comparisons between the two. Watch the movie. The movie, in my opinion, was very well done.
Yeah.
As well done as it could be to have been released in America.
It's not maybe.
I mean,
We'll see.
Yeah, the movie softened some of the edges of the comic, but I can see why they did it.
Mm-hmm. I can see why. It's just a lot of the whys,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, the one thing is that fate computer subplot is completely missing from the movie, which I'm fine with because I thought it was kind of dumb to begin with, I guess.
The one thing, I could definitely say the movie's worth watching, and it's definitely at least good in the Book of Scott, but I don't know if it's worth $6.50.
Oh, it's definitely worth seeing in the theater, I think. Keep in mind that in addition to this being the book and the movie are very good and very deep. However, in the movie, in both of them, there are various scenes where V is just killing people with knives.
I like that.
In the movie, it's done by the Matrix guys.
Yep.
The knife fighting scenes are very good knife fighting scenes, to put it at that.
That's their
They're
excellent.
probably some of the best knife fighting scenes that have been in a movie in a long time.
I'd say if for the knife fighting scenes alone, I would pay $2.
All right, we're almost at the $6.50.
Yeah, almost there.
Anyway, we're out. Look tomorrow to hear us talk about the movie.
Which we're going to record in 5 minutes.
And that was Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for our opening theme.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com. If you like our podcasts, you'll love our forums. Make sure you visit them. You can send your email feedback to geeknights@gmail.com. And if you want, you can leave us a voicemail at 206-333-1537.
Geeknights airs every weeknight, Monday through Thursday.
Geeknights is recorded with absolutely no studio and no audience. But unlike those other talk shows, it's actually recorded at night.